Evan was wiping down the kitchen counter when his phone lit up with a message that felt strangely heavy. It was from Megan, a long paragraph saying she needed 2 full months of no contact to heal, and that she would be staying at a friend's place for a while. She added that her things would remain in his apartment, as if nothing was truly ending, just paused on her terms. Evan stared at the screen, replaying the last few weeks of distance, excuses, and late nights she never explained. Something in his chest tightened, a quiet confirmation that this message wasn't about healing at all. After a long breath, he typed only 2 words. "Take it." The moment he pressed send, the apartment felt colder, and the silence that followed told him one thing clearly. This was no break for healing. This was the beginning of something he needed to uncover. In the weeks before Megan's message, Evan had already sensed something shifting beneath the surface. She had begun drifting through their shared life like a guest instead of a partner, offering soft excuses that never matched the exhaustion in her eyes or the tension in her voice. Nights that used to be spent cooking together turned into evenings where she claimed she was too drained and would rather stay at Sarah's place. When Evan asked why she was suddenly sleeping over there so often, she brushed it off, saying Sarah was going through a hard time and needed company. But even that explanation felt thin. Every time he tried to ask more, Megan would act irritated, as if he was invading a space she no longer wanted to share with him. And then there was Lucas, the yoga instructor she had recently become fascinated with. At first it seemed harmless: group classes, weekend sessions, wellness events. But gradually, Evan noticed the subtle signs. Megan dressing differently. Her phone lighting up with messages. She turned face down the moment he entered the room. Her sudden obsession with healing energy and emotional resets, concepts she had never cared about before. It all built a quiet storm inside Evan, when he tried to ignore until the night she sent the message asking for 2 months of silence. Once those words appeared on his screen, everything snapped into clarity. Something was wrong. Something didn't add up. And if she was stepping away, he needed to protect himself. The morning after sending, "Take it," Evan woke with a strange sense of duty settling over him. If Megan truly wanted distance, then he would give her distance in the exact way she asked: clean, complete, and without loopholes. But silence didn't mean irresponsibility. It meant structure. It meant protecting himself from whatever mess she was quietly building. The first step was contacting the landlord. Evan explained that Megan had moved out temporarily and asked whether her name appeared anywhere on the lease. The answer came swiftly and clearly. She wasn't on the contract. She wasn't a co-tenant. She was simply a permitted guest, someone allowed to stay only as long as the primary tenant, Evan, approved. When he ended the call, he felt the first piece of solid ground beneath his feet. If she wanted to step away, the legal boundaries were already on his side. Next, he sat at his desk and opened the accounts for electricity, water, gas, and internet. All of them were under his name. Every bill, every usage record, every overdue charge Megan had promised to handle later. Evan stared at the accumulating balances and let out a quiet breath. He wasn't going to carry her expenses anymore. Not while she was off somewhere, healing. Not while she had walked out of the apartment without a real conversation. He called each company one by one. With a steady voice, he explained that he would no longer be responsible for covering anyone else's access. He asked for the exact process to remove additional users. He requested dates, options, and instructions. When they told him he could close the accounts and allow the next occupant to open new ones, he gave Megan exactly 2 weeks, written clearly in an email she might read or might ignore. 2 weeks to transfer services into her own name if she intended to use them. After that, everything under his name would end. Then came the task he had been avoiding. Her belongings. He walked through the apartment with cardboard boxes, folding her clothes, collecting her scattered items, placing them gently but decisively inside labeled containers. He wasn't angry. He wasn't sentimental. He was objective, as if organizing the remnants of a life someone had chosen to step out of without warning. The bathroom shelf emptied. The closet thinned. The books she never finished reading went into a neat stack. When he sealed the final box, the apartment suddenly felt larger, clearer, and strangely breathable. Evan rented a small storage unit nearby. He placed every box inside, photographed the locked door, and stored the key in an envelope. He didn't leave a note. He didn't send an update. She had asked for no contact, and he was honoring it with uncompromising precision. By the time he returned home, evening light had filled the apartment with a warm glow. For the first time since Megan's message, the space felt like his again. Not a shared transition. Not a waiting room for someone deciding whether she wanted him. It was a place with order, boundaries, and clarity. Evan sat quietly on the couch, not triumphant, not relieved, just grounded. She had created the distance. He was creating the consequences. And step by step, he was reclaiming everything she had left in limbo. As Evan moved through the next week in silence, he couldn't help noticing how quickly Megan seemed to recover. Her social media, which she rarely updated before, suddenly bloomed with polished photos of sunsets, yoga poses, green smoothies, and captions about releasing toxic attachments. It was jarring, almost surreal. While he was sorting through the logistical mess she left behind, she was presenting herself as a liberated soul, floating above the chaos she had created. Each post felt like a carefully staged performance, too calm, too curated, too conveniently timed after her abrupt disappearance. Evan didn't comment, didn't react, didn't even open her stories. But the posts found their way to him anyway. The morning after the utilities were shut off, Evan woke to an avalanche of notifications. Dozens of missed calls. Paragraph-long texts from Megan, some typed so angrily that half the words were autocorrected into nonsense. But he didn't open any of them. He set his phone face down and made breakfast, letting the world stay quiet around him. It was calm, controlled, peaceful, until an email arrived that finally made him raise an eyebrow. Megan claimed she was a legal resident of the apartment and accused him of illicitly terminating essential services. The message was written in a tone that tried to sound official, filled with copied legal jargon and bolded threats. But the formatting was sloppy, the terminology was wrong, and the email was sent from her personal Gmail. Evan didn't respond. Instead, he forwarded the message to the landlord. The landlord called him within minutes. His voice was stern but calm. He stated clearly that Megan had no tenant rights, had voluntarily moved out, and had never held any legal standing in the unit. He even added that if she attempted to return without Evan's permission, it would be considered trespassing. Evan thanked him and hung up, feeling a wave of reassurance wash over him. Later that afternoon, Megan escalated. She sent another email, claiming she was prepared to pursue legal action unless he restored the power and internet within 24 hours. This one included a fake letterhead she must have cobbled together on a phone app. The grammar was worse than before, and the threat felt theatrical rather than intimidating. Evan finally replied. His message was concise, unemotional, and attached with screenshots. He included confirmation from each utility company, records that showed everything was in his name, and the email she had originally sent demanding 2 months of no contact. He ended with one line. "I am respecting the boundary you set." Then he archived the conversation. Megan's reaction was instantaneous. His phone lit up again and again, this time with furious, rambling texts. She accused him of being vindictive. She insisted he was weaponizing boundaries. She claimed he was punishing her healing journey. But underneath every accusation, Evan could see what she was really feeling: fear. Lucas's apartment wasn't equipped to handle the sudden blackout. She couldn't work without Wi-Fi. She couldn't shower without hot water. She couldn't pretend everything was fine when the consequences of her choices finally arrived. As the evening settled, she tried a new tactic. She claimed she had left essential items in the apartment and needed access immediately. But Evan had every item boxed, labeled, photographed, and stored safely in a rented unit. He opened his notes, double-checked everything, then closed the file. He wasn't going to break the silence she insisted on just because her situation was becoming inconvenient. At 9 p.m., an email arrived from a different sender. It looked like another attempt at a legal threat, this time supposedly from an advisor helping her. But the writing style matched Megan's too closely, right down to the misplaced commas. Evan didn't laugh, but the absurdity made his chest feel lighter. She was spiraling, and every frantic message confirmed he had made the right choice by stepping back. He powered off his phone, set it on the nightstand, and sat quietly in the dim room. She wanted distance. He was giving her exactly that. And now that her curated facade was cracking, the truth beneath it was finally beginning to show. 2 days after Megan's faux legal meltdown, Evan heard a knock on his door that didn't sound like a delivery. When he opened it, Lucas stood there, arms crossed, jaw tight, posturing as if he had any authority in the situation. He didn't say hello. Instead, he immediately demanded access to the apartment to retrieve Megan's belongings. Evan didn't move from the doorway. He explained calmly that all of Megan's items had already been packed and placed in a secured storage unit, and that he wouldn't violate her own request for no contact by coordinating through someone who had no connection to the lease. Lucas tried to insist he had a right to enter because he was helping her. Evan simply asked him one question. "Are you on the lease?" Lucas faltered, muttered something under his breath, and left with a frustrated huff. Late one night, long after Evan had settled into a routine without Megan's chaos, the landlord called. His voice was tense. He said someone had been seen climbing through Evan's bathroom window. Before Evan could even respond, the landlord added the name, Megan. She had slipped onto the property, checked the balcony, and then forced her way in through the only unlocked window. The landlord warned that police were already on the way. Evan felt a sinking heaviness, not fear, but exhaustion. This was exactly the line he knew she would cross when desperation replaced pride. When he arrived at the apartment, lights were flashing outside. An officer stood with Megan near the entrance. Her hair was a mess, her face tear-stained, her voice trembling as she tried to explain that she had a right to be here. But the officer had already spoken to the landlord and understood the situation clearly. Megan wasn't a tenant. She had left voluntarily. And now she was trespassing. Evan kept his distance, offering only a brief confirmation of the events. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He simply stated the truth. She had no permission to enter. When the officers escorted her off the property with a warning, she looked at Evan with a mix of anger and heartbreak, an expression that said she still believed she could twist the narrative back in her favor. The online unraveling began the very next day. Lucas posted a long message on his social profile, clearly written in frustration. He admitted that he had no idea Megan was still in a relationship when she started staying at his place. He said he felt used, manipulated, and blindsided by her lies. He even apologized to Evan publicly, clarifying that he never wanted to be involved in someone else's turmoil. The comments exploded instantly. Friends, acquaintances, and strangers dissecting every piece of Megan's behavior that had been quietly hidden beneath her curated healing persona. Screenshots began circulating. People shared stories about her inconsistencies, her dramatic excuses, her habit of bending the truth until it snapped. Everything she had tried so hard to control was now slipping through her fingers, exposed under the weight of her own contradictions. Megan reacted by posting cryptic quotes, then deleting them, then writing long paragraphs complaining about being betrayed by people who should care. But no one was defending her anymore. Her facade had cracked too deeply. In the privacy of Evan's message requests, she tried again. Her tone shifted from anger to pleading. She asked for her belongings back. She said she needed support. She said she couldn't handle everything that was collapsing around her. She even tried to say she wanted to rebuild what they had. But Evan had already secured her belongings in storage. He had documented every step. He had honored her boundary more faithfully than she ever intended. He typed the final message with steady hands. He reminded her of her own words, the 2 months of no contact she demanded. He told her he was continuing to respect that. Then he stopped. No lecture. No emotion. No anger. Just closure she never expected to receive in the same form she delivered it. When he pressed send, the air felt still. For the first time since the chaos began, everything truly ended. Her lies had surfaced. Her safety nets had vanished. Her manipulations no longer held power. And Evan finally understood that silence wasn't just distance. It was truth, exposed by the very boundary she believed would protect her. Evan stood in the quiet apartment, the weight of the past weeks finally settling into something he could fully understand. The chaos, the lies, the manipulation, the betrayals, they no longer felt like wounds he needed to pick at. They had become evidence, a map of everything he would never allow himself to accept again. He gathered the last of Megan's things into a box, not with anger, but with a strange calm that surprised him. He realized that closure wasn't something someone handed you. It was something you decided to take. When he set the box by the door, he felt space open in the room for the first time in months, as if the air itself had been waiting for this moment. Outside, the evening light spilled through the windows, warm and steady, untouched by everything that had happened. Evan picked up his phone, not to check old messages or search for explanations, but simply to turn it off for the night. The silence felt different now. It wasn't the silence of loss. It was the silence of starting over.